All right, let's see. We got this mic. I got my laptop. I have the headsets in case I need them. I have my 5 hour energy because I am like rocking on no sleep here on this Friday, but that's all right. This is a very cool setup. I'm excited to be here in the Chatterbox Studios. It's the Kidder and Kev show here on 1410 ESPN Radio and, of course, on the Chatterbox Sports Network. I have 3 TVs on the wall across from me. Which one am I staring at?
The one that you would be looking at is the one in the middle here.
The one in
That
the middle.
shows what's on air. For
Ah,
those on the radio, he is currently in Chatterbox Studios. So we have a couple TVs mounted up on the wall for program and output, for preview and output. I mean, and then the other one is meant for whenever there's a live game, like a Reds game that we have whenever we have a show or anything like that.
very
So,
cool. Very cool. Well, again, this is the first time we're doing the show here in the studio. Kev Nash off today. In fact, he is in Indianapolis. He's checking out the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers playoff game later on tonight. He had an off day scheduled, so he's taking advantage of that. And I'm taking advantage of the chance to come to the studio from here. Justin Kidder with you here. Got Casey, of course. Man, Trace making you work all this extra hours.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you were just hanging out with Tom?
yeah. It's here at Chatterbox Studios, we do a lot of different things, but I've been labeled as the lead producer in the chat. So this is honestly like this is what I do. I sit in this chair and I make sure that these shows go live and make sure that everything runs smoothly. I've been here since 9. I've not left this seat since 9 in the morning. And I couldn't want it any other way. I love doing this. So
Where did Elliot go? I have a bone to pick with him.
Oh,
He called me out for my Joey Votto take. I was looking forward today to be able to confront him face to face, man to man, and he skedaddled. He got out of here. All right, so that will come back. We'll come back on that one. I'm sure we will. But no, we have a lot to dive into here today. Casey's going to keep me honest with the Bengals talk, so that's good. I can't see him roll his eyes when I'm in the studio. I could see it today. All right, so he's going to keep me honest with the Bengals talk. That's what I like about this. But excited to be with you guys here. And we're just going to open up. We're going to dive right away into it. Usually we do our top of the hour headlines or our what's trending, but we all know what's trending. We know what's hot right now, and of course, it's instant reaction to the draft. And to the surprise of many, because people are waiting for me to dive onto this Amarius Mims pick and just kind of pick apart the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm here to tell you, I don't hate it. I don't like it. I don't think it's the worst pick, but I also don't think it's the best pick, because the question I have for the Cincinnati Bengals is you're putting out mixed messages. For one, T. Higgins wants out. No, you're not going anywhere. We're in win now mode. We have a window to win a Super Bowl. We're going all in for one more run. We're keeping you here. We're going all in for a Super Bowl. Trey Hendrickson, which we'll get to in a moment. I didn't get to dive into that because that came out on the day of the Reds game that preempted our show. They're not going to move on from him because the Bengals just don't do that. I don't have an issue with that. But they don't move on from these guys. But basically with the message being, we're winning now. So if they wanted to move on from these guys, they could. They can get a crap load of picks in return for T. They could get a lot in return for Trey Hendrickson and not rebuild, but retool around Joe Burrow. As long as you have Joe Burrow, as long as you have Jamar Chase, those are the centerpieces that you're going to build around. So if that's your message of, no, we're going in on a Super Bowl this upcoming season, then I kind of wanted that to be reflected in how they approach this draft. And I don't mind the pick. I really do not mind the pick. But I feel like if it was truly about making decisions to win this upcoming season, you could not have gone wrong, in my opinion, with going the wide receiver route. And I know that's something that we talked about in Brian Thomas earlier in the week. I wasn't down on the Brian Thomas pick because that checks off a lot of things. If you are moving on from T after this year, you get your wide receiver. You have your wide receiver now. You have your third wide receiver, and you could have 3 elite potential wide receivers out on the field this upcoming season. T leaves. You move Thomas over. Boom. You've checked off that. Then address the offensive line issues next year. Whatever. This is a weird pick to me because it signifies a pick of the future. It's like a baseball pick. Like, oh man, you see this all the time. When Tyler Stevenson was drafted, I remember this is the time they had Devin Mesoraco. Obviously they had Tucker Barnhart. They had a lot of depth at the catcher position. Everyone was mad and complaining because why are we drafting Tyler Stevenson? Well, it ended up being the right pick at the time, but it was a pick for the future. It was down the road. Baseball and football are not the same. But they went that route. So this route says, okay, they're going to develop him. They're going to use this time and develop him for the future. Well, you can't have it both ways. I think your picks later in the draft are for more of the future. The picks right away should be more of picks that are going to help you win and win right away. I'm not saying he can't help them win right away, but you have a guy that only has 8 starts. And I'm hearing all the, well, he played at Georgia. That's a winning program. Billy Price. All right, that was a winning program. Played at the Ohio State University. I can't say the in Cincinnati. I'll get mad at me. I've been noticing the pushback on the Ohio State love so far on the Chatterbox. But you look at Jonah Williams. I'm not saying this is going to be a bust of a pick. I just thought it was a very gutsy pick, and it doesn't sit in line with the messaging that the Bengals are sending with we're forcing T. Higgins to stay, even though he wants out. They're going to force Trey Hendrickson to stay, even though they want out. If it's about the future, trade both, acquire those picks, then pick a guy, of course, like they did in Mims, and build around them for the future. Just a little bit of mixed messaging. Where am I wrong in that? And again, Casey's here to keep me honest. That's what I like.
That's right. I agree with the mixed messaging, and I think that I would have rather had a guy that has the right away ability to provide value for the team. I think you're looking at those picks at that time. If you're not trading up, of course, Amarius Mims makes sense in the idea that you're picking for the future. Other than that, you look at what was available. The top corners were available. Well, that would probably be CB4, CB3. You just drafted DJ Turner. You're trying to figure out what to do with Dax Hill. Cam Taylor-Britt is upcoming budding star on the team. It would have been very hard for me to make that make sense. Now, CB4 for the Bengals has played 800 snaps every season for the Taylor era. So maybe I'm a little wrong there. But other than that, like Mims was a prospect that if he did play a full season would have probably been in that top 10 conversation, in that top 5 conversation. He has that tremendous upside value to him. The film that's there's not really a whole lot of negative to it. There's only a lot of positivity with this film. For me, the Bengals made this move for the future. But that being said, Trent Brown also gets hurt a lot. Only averages 9 games a season. I think that we could potentially see him make a start sometime this year. I'm not going to predict injuries, but last year,
17 game regular season. I mean,
there's just a lot that can happen. And Bengals were uninjured last year on the offensive line for the most part. That's not going to happen again. It just doesn't happen 2 years in a row in the NFL. I think this is a solid move. I gave it a B, which most people are either on the, this is a terrible pick, C minus, or this is a A plus. Got to protect the franchise and Joe Burrow. I'm more right down the middle. I think this was, if you're going to go down the route of protecting Joe Burrow, this is the route you go. It's not going to be Troy Fautanu. I think that would have been a terrible pick. Good luck, Steelers, with that one. And you're not certainly going Tyler Guyton or the other guys because they just don't have as much potential as Mims did. So that being said, I think the Bengals made the right decision staying put and picking him at 18. Now, I would have loved for them to have drafted Byron Murphy, just trade up and make that pick, make that selection. Maybe you make a deal with the Colts. They were the first team to pick a defensive player, an edge rusher. Maybe he falls further down the draft. I was disappointed in seeing him get selected. That was going to be my guy that I wanted the Bengals to go for. But the thing is, they have plenty of ammo to make a move if they really want a guy. There's a lot of guys here day 2 that I really, really like. And they've got the ammo to move. They've moved. They've traded up in the draft, traded down in the draft on day 2, 6 out of the 7 years here, the last 7 years. So I really like where the Bengals are at right now. I think they can still get a guy if they really want to. That's going to make a difference on defense.
Yeah, and you referenced the fact that, okay, injury happens. Mims could potentially be thrown out into the fire. And it's like, well, is he ready to be thrown out into the fire? But he has all the intangibles. I mean, they have 3 6'7", 6'8" offensive linemen. I mean, they have 3 woolly mammoths that they're going to be putting in front of Joe Burrow in some kind of form. And just because he's not starting doesn't mean he's not going to be getting some pretty important snaps if that is the case. My thing is this. I don't overreact to draft picks, especially after the first night. I'm going to wait till the end of the draft. You're only as good as the sum of your parts. Well, you're only as good as the sum of your parts within the draft. So I'm not going to overreact to this. I'm curious to see what they do on the back end because, again, They've drafted well during the Joe Burrow era. I know the last 2 drafts have been kind of not as they haven't hit as much as they did early on. But again, you're not picking as early on in the draft. You have to do your homework a little bit more. Not saying it's easy. I'm a Browns fan. Just because you have the number 1 overall pick doesn't mean you're guaranteed anything. But it's easier when you have the number 1 overall pick. It was easy to draft Joe Burrow. I'm not trying to piggyback off of what you guys talked about earlier on Chatterbox. Not saying it's easy and they shouldn't get credit for the Joe Burrow pick, but you have the pick of the litter. You're getting the best of the best right there at the top. When you're picking at the back of the draft and then they're in that number 18, it's all a gamble as far as that's concerned. Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We're also on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page as well. Damon Hahn messages into the show. I know the people on Chatterbox YouTube can't see the message pop up, but Damon Hahn messages in. He goes, I'm never mad about getting another massive lineman, but you are correct. It is a confusing pick. I want them to take defense, and they had their choice of picks. So many great defensive ads available. And this is, to your point, lots of defensive picks available, but there's going to be more defensive picks available at the back end of this draft or the middle of the draft than there's going to be offensive linemen as far as guys like this, especially. So, like I said, end of the day, I'll save my in-depth Bengals evaluation for the draft more so on Monday when it's all said and done. This particular pick, though, a little underwhelming, but I've been getting into this. Boring is good. Boring is good. And this is a boring pick to me, but I'm not happy with it. I'm not unhappy with it. It's just a wait and see type of approach, which you could say about most draft picks, but this one's kind of interesting. Slick on YouTube says, and everyone knows what the North is about. It's all about bully ball. He's the same guy that was complaining about take Chase and not and so he's talking about me, of course. At the time, yes, I was complaining about taking Chase instead of an offensive lineman. I mean, that stat that we pulled up the other day, ESPN's Adam Schefter shared it. The hit rate for wide receivers in the first round of the draft since 2000 is 27%. The Cincinnati Bengals had a 27% chance of Jamar Chase being what the hell he is. So good for the Bengals and good for Jamar Chase. And as a Browns fan, it pisses me off that he turned into a top 2, top 3 wide receiver in football, no doubt. But good for the Bengals for that working out the way that it did. But at that time, they needed an offensive lineman more than what they do right now about stacking for the future as far as that's concerned. John Sladen's messages in. I'm fine with the pick. If a tackle from Texas been available and they still took Mims there, then I would have been disappointed.
Yeah. And that's basically what it came down to is they were never going to trade up. I think they were always stand pat because there's going to be a Felton that they really loved. And that just happened to be Amarius Mims. If Mims had been drafted before and Murphy fell, I think they would have been happy with that situation too. So overall, if you're looking at it from a perspective of how the Bengals feel, I think they feel like they got a slam dunk at this moment, that they got a guy that they love, that they didn't have to move heaven and earth for. That being said, your hesitation about this defense is it is concerning to me because you mentioned it before on the top of the show. Trey Hendrickson's threatening to retire, and man, if that were to happen, the Bengals defense, especially the pass rush, just becomes non-existent. It just doesn't exist. And we didn't address it, obviously, with our number 1 pick. You could have if you really felt like it was a serious need, a serious concern, but they didn't.
Do you think they kind of mocked him a bit? If you take a defensive tackle right there, you're feeding into, I'm winning this leverage thing. I agree with you, by the way. Everyone says, I heard your take the other day about everyone says he doesn't have leverage in this situation. I know that he doesn't, but he kind of does because of the desperate. He sees where the defense is right now. Look, they were the second worst defense in the NFL last year in some components with him on the field.
That's right.
But he knows that, okay, they could be bad with me, but they'll be even worse without me. If the Bengals fed into that and took a defensive tackle, that means they're showing him and everyone, these threats are real. They're basically telling Trey Hendrickson, you're going to play. You're not going to, you might sit out and all that stuff. That's your money. That's fine. You do what you need to do, but you're going to play. You're not going to turn down millions of dollars. I know the guaranteed thing and whatever, but you're guaranteed to get $0 if you don't play. So that's what this all comes down to. But I did think that was interesting that they did not kind of, look at him and feed into the panic. They basically told everyone around, like, yeah, we know, we'll deal with him later. We'll deal with that position later.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I said on the show too was that it was a very calculated move to try to induce a panic in the organization. and they didn't blink. And that's just been the MO of Mike Brown and the Blackburns. They just don't blink. If a guy threatens retirement, Carson Palmer, their franchise quarterback, retired, and he sat out until they found a deal with a team and they traded him away to the Raiders. I wouldn't be shocked if it did come down to that they don't blink and they just don't really address it until till later on. Which you think about it, they drafted Andy Dalton the second round. Maybe we'll see something happen here in the second round, and they'll get whatever pass rusher they can that they feel comfortable with taking. Again, like I don't have a guy necessarily in the top of my mind that I like as a edge rusher, but in terms of just pass rush, guys like Jerzon Newton are just so appetizing to me. I think he's going to be an all-pro. This dude's nasty. I think you could move heaven and earth for him, and you have some sort of insurance there. That way, that you did your best trying to address a position of need, addressing a position that provides pass rush, which you were really poor at last year, even with Trey Hendrickson on the field. And on top of that, you're not necessarily going out and drafting his replacement at the same time. So if you're asking me what to do with the Trey Hendrickson thing, I think that's what they should do in order to be covering all the possibilities of that situation. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a chance that we see something there in the second round. I mean, that's just what the Bengals are notorious at doing, is finding replacements. So
yeah, we'll keep talking about, again, we'll continue recapping everything that went down in last night's first round of the NFL draft. And look, the Bengals, for those who are not a fan of this pick, maybe a little confusing, maybe not, but the bottom line is the Falcons easily made the dumbest decision of any team in the draft last night. We'll get to that coming up around the corner, the Trey Hendrickson stuff. I do want Bengals fans to think about this during the break, because we're going to step away for a few moments. This is for our radio crowd. I get to try the awkward pause now, like you guys get to do when recording for the show. But, think about this during the break for our radio audience and our YouTube audience too. I want to dive into this when we come back. As much flack as I give the Bengals and a lot of non-Bengals fans give them for being cheap and all this, I've always defended the Bengals and said they're not cheap. I've always said they may not make the best business decisions, but they're not cheap. I don't think they're a cheap organization. But I also say, okay, they don't make the best business decisions, but I will say, for as many players that have demanded out or have found themselves in positions to want out of Cincinnati, when was the last time the Bengals did not have leverage? Got to give the Bengals a little credit here. They've always been in control of these situations. When was the last time a player wanted out where the Cincinnati Bengals did not have the leverage? We're going to talk about that when we come back. It's a Kinner and Kev show, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We'll be right back. And we are back. It's the Kinner and Kev show, 1410. This is weird. I agree. I didn't think it was that weird, but it is. It's the Kinner and Kev show, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Appreciate the messages. Continuing to file in our reaction again. Mims being the pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. Only 8 starts at Georgia. Injured for some time, of course. So that has a lot of people a little weary about the pick. Some like Casey, who again, is running the show here today. Not unsure about it, feels pretty good about it. Brian Hetzel on Facebook messages in. He goes, I hope Mims works out, but a lot of questions. Would have taken a corner. They had the pick of any of them as far as that's concerned. Where do you put corner, Casey, as far as if you have to prioritize need for this team? Where is cornerback in that situation for you?
Cornerback on this team, I mean, like, it's
to prioritize it this high, I guess. Not much based on your facial expression.
The thing is, like, the guy available to them would have been the number 1 corner off the board. So it's like you had your pick of the litter of the secondary, which struggled last year. And you already know that cornerback 4, not even 3, cornerback 4 played 800 snaps for you last 4 or 5 years. So you know that guy's going to get snaps. So that's not an issue either. To me, you can never have enough corners in the NFL. In a league that has become so pass heavy, in a league where 3 good receivers is the almost becoming the norm nowadays, I don't think there's a time where you don't look at corner. If you only have 2, that's not enough. Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner are not enough to justify not looking at it in the draft. But with the situation with Dax Hill in that whole safety room and how he's now transitioning into corner more than likely, I think gave them a little more of a wiggle room on this whole thing. If Amarius Mims and Byron Murphy weren't there, they would have 100% picked a corner there. No doubt in my mind. That's just how a Bengals like to operate. When the top corner is available, they're going to take that guy in the draft. Just look at William Jackson.
Yep.
Look at Drake or Patrick. They like their corners. I don't know which guy it would have been, to be honest with you. I would have loved Quinyon Mitchell. I don't know if that's the way that they would go. Probably would have been Terrion Arnold, which I'm not super opposed to that either. But what it would have provided for the Bengals is another opportunity to have another shutdown corner, which Cam Taylor-Britt, he's right there, right in the middle of the league in terms of production, in terms of his coverage ability. He's right smack dab, right in the middle. You look at some of the PFF metrics, he's right there. You add another guy that has that sort of caliber to that team, and man, that secondary is looking great. So I understand the frustration of not getting a corner there, but at the same time, you're never going to get an Amarius Mims falling to you again.
How many? And again, I'm not a big mock draft guy. I'm just not. I mean, I guess if I was a fan of a team that actually had first round draft picks, maybe I would be a little bit more interested in them.
Yeah.
How many mock drafts, Casey, did you come across that had Mims in it? I guess because
For the
I
Bengals?
went and started looking at some. I didn't see him in many because I've had people message in highlighting that for the mock draft crowd out there. They haven't come across many mock drafts that had him in any of the first rounds. That should, I mean, again, mock drafts, we mock those. I get that, but that is a little questionable too. Bengals taking a chance on a position that they haven't done well developing in recent years, in the last decade at least.
Yeah, I would say that national pundits did not view Mims. I don't think that they thought that Mims would be the pick there at 18. I think they would have probably went with a more safe option with like Futanu or, best defensive player available. That I think is what was going around nationally. Now, if you look more locally here in Cincinnati, a lot of the guys here around town, a lot of them had Amarius Mims as the pick just because of the size thing there. And if you go and listen to the Bengals and how they talk about Mims, you just knew that they were set on the guy. I think they would have possibly even traded up to go get him. They talk about the size, how he just walks in the room and he's just so big. It's just eye-opening, eye-popping. Those sort of comments and saying stuff like, we'll never get a chance at a guy like this at 18 in the future. I don't know if I necessarily buy those comments, but I understand their thought process and thinking like, this is a guy that you might not have another chance at 18. And plus, you're expecting the team to be better. You're expecting the team to not be at pick 18 next year. You're expecting them to be able to compete for the playoffs here in the next 3 or 4 years with Joe Burrow. So
I feel like you guys need to be a little bit more mad at your team for wasting a last place year on an 18 pick. Like, if my team finishes in last place, I better have at least a pick better than number 18. You guys are morons and started competing. What is wrong with you guys? Like, tank, man. Baby, tank. What? Like, I'd be pissed at the backup quarterback if I'm you. I have no clue why you guys were happy with the 9-win last place team. All that did was put you in position to convince yourselves that a guy that was not on many mock drafts is the pick that, man, there's not going to be an opportunity to get. You mean like DeJuan Jones last year? How many rounds did the Bengals pass on DeJuan Jones last year? Now, again, I'm only talking smack because my team somehow took a chance and it benefited them. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. But yeah, last place finish and wasting it with the number 18 pick, man. I hate that. As a Browns fan, I like it, but I'm sure you guys hate that.
Man, you pulled on my heartstrings pulling up DeJuan Jones. The people in the chat will know, the YouTube chat will know, I was championing DeJuan Jones to be the pick. The number 1 pick for the Bengals, and he just kept falling and falling. And
there was a stretch where I remember his name being thrown in as a potential first round option. And then when he kept falling and the Browns got him, I'm like, man, as far as the Browns, you don't say this often. When it comes to offensive line, the rich get richer. The Browns are rich at offensive line. The rich got richer as far as that's concerned. They just need to start expanding that position pool just a little bit. But no, continue.
Yeah. And yeah, the thing about the Bengals, and they're just a very prideful bunch. They weren't gonna they weren't going to finish the season 0-6 in the division. That cost them, I think, the 13th pick in the draft. They cost them 5 extra slots, which that's Brock Bowers, that's Byron Murphy. So a lot of guys that people were really, really high on for the Bengals, they lost out on because they decided to beat up on a Browns team that had a bunch of backups playing for them. But I mean, I'm a prideful guy. I'm not going 0-6 in the AFC North. That's not me. That's not who I am. I'm not going to be the guy that goes 0-6 in the division. I don't want that over my head. So at the same time, I'm just, it's a pick your poison. If you're not a prideful person, I'm sure that you would wish that they would have just lost that final game of the year. And you would have had your pick pretty much of whoever the Bengals wanted. So, well, yeah, again, I mean, yeah.
No, it's look, bottom line is when it's look, last season's a thing in the past. Right now, the draft, it's all about picks for this upcoming season, picks for the future, which is why when you look at what the Falcons did, it's one of the biggest head scratchers. We'll get to that coming up around the corner. But I teased this a little bit ago, Casey, and I'm curious your thoughts on this as well. To the Bengals' credit, I guess this is going to be a little crossover topic here with the Trey Hendrickson situation. I find myself, look, I'm usually a hot take guy. I keep walking the line of walking down the middle on all these takes because I see both sides. I see why people are upset with Trey Hendrickson. I really do. I see why people are upset with him. I see people in the chat saying that, everyone's mocking and laughing at him and his agent, and I completely get that. But you got to understand his frustration too. He's kicking himself. I think he's always believed in his talents. I don't think he believed he was as good as what he was last year. I truly believe that if Trey Hendrickson thought that he was that caliber of a guy, he would not have signed that extension a year ago or would not have signed that extension for that amount of money. Now, again, you lead the league or, whatever in sacks like the way he did and doing what he did. He's kicking himself now. But I also thought you brought a good point up on this show the other day or whenever it was when you guys were breaking this down. What's the dollar breakdown? Like he's only at the difference between the guys at the top and what he's making. This is like spilled milk to a certain degree. A guy as poor as me talking about a difference in 5 to 10 million being spilled milk, but isn't it like a $5 million difference?
Yeah. So his cap number, which is different when you break out all down the contract situations, it's all a little bit different. His salary is $15 million, but
okay, that's a little higher.
It's a signing bonus too of another like 5 or 4 million, and then the every single game check is like another $200. But his final cap hit number is $20 million, whereas some of the top guys that just signed deals are like 25 million, which it's not like nothing. It's not a nothing burger, but it is kind of like you just signed an extra 5 million last year. So are we really doing this again? Another 5 million? Is that what we're going to argue for? So I like, in one respect, it's kind of silly. And the common folks' eyes to see like, it's like, come on, dude, like you're already a millionaire. I understand that perspective. At the same time, if I was making $10,000-$20,000 less than my coworkers, I would be upset too. Like that's like, I just as an example, like I would want a raise. I would want to be more fairly in line with the rest of my coworkers. So that being said, I understand both sides of that coin. To me, I think the situation is more about the guarantees of his contract. If he had guarantees in his contract, because we got to remember this, the year that he signed that, he was hurt. He was hurt during that season. He only played, I think, like half the games or something like that. And only had 8 sacks.
Play, he was banged up. Yeah. At the same time, it's not, he was just trying to battle through it a little bit.
Yeah. So like, he wants to just be guaranteed more money so he's safe, right? A guy, I hate to break it to Bengals fans, but a guy at his size and his athleticism, he doesn't have much playing time left at the level that he's at, right? A guy like Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, they're bigger, faster, stronger than what Hendrickson is. Hendrickson is 30 years old. I think, to be honest with you, I was so against him requesting this at first. I think the retirement thing is BS, but him actually requesting it, I don't see a problem with. To me, it's like, when are the Bengals going to start finally make that final step to be a modern franchise and start guaranteeing contracts to guys or past the first year, or when they go to the negotiation tables, guaranteeing more years on their contract to make guys happy, to just make them feel secure. He's not secure. If he gets hurt, Bengals have every right to cut him, and he's just gone to the wind, and he'll never be the same again. If he has a major injury, Trey Hendrickson is not going to be Trey Hendrickson anymore.
Yep.
Just as simple as that. So that's my perspective on that part of the equation. The thing that gets people mad is the retirement talk. It's like, well, you're already halfway out, dude. If you're already got one foot out the door, just retire then. Don't do this song and dance here. Like, it makes him seem kind of, I don't know.
It's tough for us as common folk to sympathize with the guy that's haggling over, already at 15 mil, haggling over another 15 or 10, 15 mil, whatever it is. Completely get that. But I've always been told throughout my time, and when it comes time for contract negotiations, don't bluff. Do not threaten something that you're not willing to follow through with. Because the first time that you threaten to quit, if you don't get what you want, and then you don't get what you want and you don't quit, you'll never get what you ask for again moving forward.
That's right.
Because they will not respect what you brought to the negotiation table. Because seeing this happen a lot in our industry, again, people, man, if I don't get this, I'm going to quit. The bosses think you're going to quit. Bosses come back to you, say, hey, we just couldn't get it done. And then you show up to work the next day. The bosses, for one, won't respect you anymore. And two, the next time you threaten something, if they don't give you what you want, they're not going to take you seriously, or they're not going to match the urgency. So what I do respect about Trey Hendrickson is I don't think he's as silly and dumb as what people are trying to make him out to be. I think the dude's really willing to retire. I don't think the guy's just throwing that. I mean, that threw everyone for a loop. You're right. The second the word retirement got brought up, everyone's kind of perked up in their chair. They're, tweeting at everyone saying, oh, relax. It's just a negotiation. Oh, retire. Oh, that's a different type of thing. T. Higgins, he just requested a trade, didn't demand a trade, didn't threaten to not play, didn't threaten to quit, didn't threaten to retire. He just requested it. He's just asking. All right. And like requesting a trade. Okay. That technically, okay, I don't want to be here. He wants to be here for the right circumstances. There are players who are like, I don't want to be here. I don't care how much you pay me. Get me the hell out of here. That's not what T's doing. That's technically not what Trey's doing. Trey wants to be in Cincinnati. That's why he came to Cincinnati to begin with. And, but I do think he's willing to retire. And I think that's why the Bengals need to respect it just a little bit. They need to take it serious just a little bit. Because like I said, I'm not comparing what I do to what he does, but I do think that I don't think this guy's operating goofy. I think that he knows dang well, hey, I am willing to retire if I do not get what I want as far as that's concerned. So we'll see what ends up happening when that is all said and done. I still think the Bengals have the leverage in this situation. I think they have to respect and pay attention to what Hendrickson is saying. I think they need to be prepared for if he does retire, if he doesn't get what he wants, because I think that's a possibility. I don't think he's throwing that word out there just to scare people. I think he has considered it. I think he is willing to do it. Andrew Whitworth is a prime example. I don't know what podcast. I think it was Paul Dehner. I don't know who shared it. It might have been Goodberry. I don't know who shared it a while back. Is that my cue, by the way?
That was the cue.
That was the cue. That was a loud cue.
That was a very loud cue. Oopsie.
I forgot who shared the video, but Andrew Whitworth did a fascinating job kind of explaining what went south in Cincinnati. And it's the exact same scenario here. You would have to think that Hendrickson and Whitworth have had a conversation about this because it's eerily identical. The retirement word. And Andrew Whitworth talked about this too. Same situation. He agreed to an extension, then balled out for a few years and realized, man, I'm not getting paid what my market value is. I feel like the organization should, even though I'm under contract, respect the way I'm playing and at least get me to a respectable number. And when those things weren't happening, he threatened to retire, threatened to quit in the middle of the season, wrote a letter in the middle of the season. Then Mike Brown stepped up, took care of business or whatever. But the word retirement, the willingness to walk away, that's what got their attention. And he was willing to do it. And I think Hendrickson is willing to do it as well. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. So let's see if I can actually follow radio rules here. And for one, go to break on time, which my guy Casey's here is keeping me in line. So I'm about to do that. But when I tease something, I'm the worst at that. I tease something and I never come back and pick up where I left off with the tease. So let's pick up when we come back with what I left off with the tease the last dang segment, which was the last time the Bengals did not have leverage in a contract dispute. Got to give them. There's a lot of teams out there who do not have leverage in these contract disputes, and the Bengals always seem to have it. We'll talk about that when we come back. It's the Kinner and Kev Show here on 1410 ESPN Radio and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We'll be right back. And we are back. It's the Kinner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Someone asked in the chat a little bit ago, I have to scroll through and find it, but Casey, someone asked if this was a crossover episode. Yes, basically. I like that. That's why I texted Trace earlier. I'm like, it's going to be like a little crossover episode. That's exactly what it is.
It's exactly what it is.
You know, I'm old. I'm in my 30s. I watch a lot of, crime dramas. I watch a little Law and Order. I love when the Law and Order does the crossover episodes. You get a little Mariska Hargitay, a little Elliot Stabler, the little crossover episode. I like that. That's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Avengers almost. You know, you're just putting together superheroes, right? Sometimes it's like Captain America and Iron Man come together.
I don't know what my superhero is. I think what it is, you want to know what my superhero power is?
What?
I make your listeners disappear. I think that's what my that's what my superpower is. It's pretty impressive as far as that's concerned. But no, I need your help with this one as well, because I'm curious your thoughts. Everyone's waiting for me to bury the Bengals. Everyone is waiting for me to put on my Bengal hater hat. And I've always said, I may have Bengals opinions that you don't like, but it doesn't mean that I hate the Cincinnati Bengals. I will say, though, in the regular season, I do get a little salty. I do. I'm a,
Don't we all?
I do take shots, when Joe Burrow wins and my team loses and I see Joe Burrow being cocky, it pisses me off. So I throw some jabs, Super Bowl Sunday. I made fun of how he dressed. I have no shame in that. I have no problem with that. Y'all love everything he does. He walks on water. Man, I'm waiting for him to fall through the water when my Browns are not doing what they're supposed to, man. But that's the rivalry. It is what it is.
Have you heard me during NFL season?
I can't wait for the fall. I can't wait. I hope Trace doesn't get rid of us before the fall, because I can't wait to see what we do during the fall.
Because I do this thing called a stink list, right? And it just ranks all the NFL teams. And those of you in the chat that know me, I like to put a certain team all the way at the bottom, the putrid part of the stink list. It doesn't matter how well they do. Actually, this year they kind of moved up a little bit from the putrid list. But the Brownies, they somehow find their way always down there at the bottom.
And that's great. And Drew Garrison, I haven't seen him pop up in the chat yet, but man, he is doing everything he can to storm our studios and take over our studios. He said that on multiple occasions. I said, listen, this is why this is going to work out. I get to continue being me, and I don't have to push away Bengals fans, because there's going to be people like Drew, people like yourself, people like Elliot that are going to fight for the Bengal fan, and allows me to still be me. I could still be unlikable.
That's right.
The likable people come in, save the day for the Bengals. However, if there ever is a time where the Browns and Bengals do meet in the playoffs, I'm going to be unbearable. And then, like all cowardly people do, if the Browns lose, I'm taking off that week. But you guys haven't experienced it yet, but I always love those Stephen A. Smith videos every time the Dallas Cowboys lose.
Yeah.
I have a habit of every time the Bengals lose to the Browns of doing the same exact thing. And I really enjoy it, which happens to be a lot. It is the weirdest dynamic. The Bengals beating up on everybody else. They can't seem to beat the Browns. It gives me 2 weeks of joy, at least a year.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But nonetheless, should I stick to my teas?
Yeah.
I should do my job. I'm getting a little off topic here. The 5 Hour Energy is doing its job. So there's that. The Cincinnati Bengals, this Trey Hendrickson situation, it's pretty wild. So when you think back to the Jesse Bates situation, he wanted out. They said, no, you're staying put. Okay. Joe Mixon technically didn't really demand out, right? There was never a Joe Mixon trade demand. But once again, it was a situation where if the market was a little different, probably would have forced his way out, like especially when he had to take the pay cut to stay.
Right.
He took the pay cut to, everyone, I remember getting, me and Icky Woods going back and forth about this. He's a good leader. He took less money for the team. I'm like, he took less money to stay on the team. He didn't take less money for the team. It was either take less money or you're off the team. I mean, there were so many great running backs or good running backs that were free agents that year. But the bottom line is he had to take less money to stay on the team because he had no leverage. Jesse Bates wanted out. He ultimately ended up playing because he had no leverage. T. Higgins has demanded a trade. Did he demand it twice? Was that that was weird reporting and I couldn't tell?
I don't know if he requested it twice. I think the reports just bring up when Trey Hendrickson requested a trade, they just also dropped in there that T. Higgins also requested a trade.
So it's all part of this. So we'll just we'll backdate it to the first initial trade request because he had his youth camp, about a week, 2 weeks ago, and basically said he was going to play this upcoming season. So that did throw people for a loop. But the bottom line is Jesse Bates wanted out, couldn't get out. He had no leverage. Joe Mixon took the pay cut, didn't demand a trade, but he took the pay cut to stay in Cincinnati because it was either take the pay cut or you were going to be cut. It's as simple as that. All right. You look at this T. Higgins situation. Love T. Higgins. Okay. I loved when he was drafted by the Bengals, even though I'm not a Bengals fan. I thought that was a great draft pick. It was perfect to match him up with Joe Burrow right off the bat. He has no leverage. None whatsoever. They tagged him $21.5 million guaranteed. He wants out. That's fine. Eat that $21.5 million guaranteed. That's wild. He's not going to do that. He has no leverage. And then this Trey Hendrickson situation. He wants out. He has no leverage, which is why the word retirement is coming into play here. The only reason he's throwing out the retirement word is because that's his only card to play. Now, as I said earlier, he has to be willing to actually follow through with it if that's the case. But he has no leverage. So I give the Bengals credit with this. So many people call them cheap. I don't think they're a cheap organization. They spend money when they need to spend the money. They spend money on their players. They do a good job of taking care of their own. Now, I get we're getting to a point where they're not taking care of Jesse Bates. They technically didn't take care of Mixon. They're not taking care of T. They're not taking care of Hendrickson, even though they did a year ago. So that's not a fair assessment either. But look, they're Super Bowl contenders. Super Bowl contenders can't take care of everybody. No one's ripping the 49ers because they could barely keep Deebo Samuel happy, and they're struggling to keep Brandon Ayuk happy, which he's about to be out of there. Maybe not. I'm not really sure what's happening there. We'll look at that in a minute. But it pains me to defend the Cincinnati Bengals, but they always seem, as goofy as their front office can be, they always seem to be ahead of the player. They always seem to be ahead of the player. The Cowboys always find their backs against the wall. They always seem to have their backs against the wall. All right. Like they always seem to be in some kind of dispute with the player some way or another. And the Cincinnati, but yet they always have bad contracts. Like they had to give Dak that money. They had to do that. Like Burrow, there was no haggling there. All right. It was weird how long it took to get it done. I did start to poke at that. I'm like, isn't it a little weird that that's going to be your quarterback? What is he asking for that you're not giving him? Give him whatever the hell he wants. Get him signed. It got done. It's fascinating to me. Every player that wants to puff their chest out with the Bengals, as goofy as Mike Brown is, as goofy as that front office is in the eyes of non-Bengals fans, they always seem to be one step ahead of the player, and not just any players, the star players. I can't think of the last time that the Bengals did not have leverage in this type of situation.
Well, I agree with you in the idea that they, during the contract negotiations, have always had the leverage. It's whether or not it actually worked out for them in the end, though, because if they let the player walk, I'm thinking Andrew Whitworth, thinking about Jesse Bates, how that impacted the team. Yet to see on Joe Mixon. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it does, like the Carson Palmer situation, kind of sparked that new era of Bengals football. It's happened more times than not that it's actually come back to bite them in the butt in terms of the relationship.
Yep.
That's why on the show Off the Bench a couple days ago when we talked about this, I said that the optics of this whole thing just don't mesh well for me. 2 of your top 5 players requesting trades due to contract disputes, guarantees, things like that. I think they make the team look like a undesirable location for young stars to come to because they know you're not going to get that second contract with a team once they sign you to that deal. They're either going to ship you off somewhere because they're not willing to give the guarantees, or they're going to just let you walk. And it's hard to be invested in a team when you know that they're not really truly invested into you long term. That's my one concern with this whole situation. Now, I don't know if you were going to go that direction with this or not, but my thoughts, I had 2 thoughts on the Trey Hendrickson thing. I already gave my piece on whether or not he's in the right or wrong. Now it's more of we're here. We're in this spot for the Bengals organization. Do you continue to let this happen and potentially him retire? You potentially trade him and just take a roll of the dice and see what happens. I've seen from my lifetime how that turns out more times than not. It turns out that you didn't plan good enough for the offensive line. You're in shambles with Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. You try to replace Jesse Bates with Dax Hill. We have one of the worst secondaries in the NFL the next year. What are you planning on doing with Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins? This is a very big. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit this, but this is a huge critical offseason for the Bengals.
Oh, no doubt.
They
No
have to
doubt.
they have to make the right decision with these guys. And I'm just afraid of the optics of it afterwards, because we already have been touted as an organization that's getting out of the old age of NFL organization practices. They are starting to spend money on offensive line, get help for Joe Burrow, and then they do stuff like this where it's like, I don't see the big deal of giving guaranteed money to these guys or giving him an extra year and giving him more money. It's an interesting predicament the Bengals find themselves in at the moment.
So I do see what you're saying, because the optics, like, so you Bengals fans know more than anybody what's leading to these. So Jesse Bates, it wasn't like, oh man, the Bengals wanted to keep Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates just wanted more money. Because he couldn't get more money, he left. It was simply, and this is what I, again, having to be nice here, I respect when teams just stick to, okay, we're not going in that direction. Oh, they haven't even contacted my camp. Why contact you? They don't want to keep you. They want T. Higgins, but they don't. They're not financially prioritizing him. There's going to be. I mean, that's why Duke Tobin talked about the pie. He used the pie, example. There's only so many slices of the pie. They would love to give pie to everybody, but there's only so many slices. And T. Higgins, they would love to give him a big old chunk of that pie, but not at the expense of an offensive lineman, not at the expense of a pass rusher, not at the expense of defensive back or whatever it is. You add to depth and all that other stuff. That's what we're going to talk about the Eagles here in a moment, because the Eagles are making me put my foot in my mouth for something I said the other day. So we'll get to that here shortly. But the wild thing at the end of the day is I give the Bengals credit. When they make up their mind on something, they're sticking to it. Jesse Bates, we like you. Of course, we love you in Cincinnati, but we're not paying you what the market is saying that you should be paid, because we are redirecting our funds elsewhere. They're not a cheap organization. They're just choosing to move their money elsewhere. T. Higgins, of course they want T. Why would you not want T with Jamar and Joe Burrow? But they have made up their mind. We can't pay you $25 million. We can't pay Jamar Chase $30 to $33 million. We can't pay Joe Burrow $55 million altogether, at least, because they've done taking care of Joe. They're going to take care of Jamar, and he's the odd man out. And I've been waving that flag from the very beginning. So the thing is we all know as Bengals fans the decision making and what's going into it. It's not the Bengals don't have the money to pay Jesse Bates. It's they didn't want to pay Jesse Bates. They would rather financially prioritize another position. Same thing with the T. Higgins. It's not that they don't have the money to pay T. Higgins. They have the money, but they are saying, hey, we need to put that money elsewhere. Same thing with this Hendrickson thing. The only thing I'll say about the Hendrickson thing that I will criticize the Bengals on, let's say he didn't sign that extension last year. He's coming off that big season last year. You were going to make him. You have to have a big time pass rusher. There's no way you were going to let Hendrickson just walk by not paying him what he was supposed to be paid. So if you were going to go through negotiations this upcoming or this offseason, you were going to pay him market value. So let's just get there. Let's just show by good faith, because you have to pay that position. And I've said this in my industry before too. We're asking for this. You're not going to give it to us. We're going to leave. Then when you post the position, you're going to post the position for the money that should be going to us anyways. Why not just skip out all of that messy stuff and just take care of everyone up front? If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, pay Hendrickson what he wants, because you were going to give it to him or the next pass rusher anyways, unless, to your point, they're going to go younger. But, I mean, you're winning now, right? It's all about winning now.
Right.
I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. But again, the Bengals are fascinating. They're perfect for sports talk because there's so much to talk about. There's still plenty more to talk about heading into this weekend with rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the NFL draft.
Yeah, that's right. How about we take a break right here, and we'll pick up after the break.
I like it. I like you're basically saying, dude, just shut the heck up and go to commercial break. Our traffic director in Dayton would love you, by the way. All right, Kinner and Cab, 1410 ESPN Radio and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Hour number 2 coming up next. And we are back. Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Nick on Facebook messages in. We spent a lot of time. Pretty much that first hour was all Bengals, all draft, and I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Nick sends a message in through the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. The Trey thing, nothing can be done for 3 months per the CBA. We get that. This isn't really about that. We know that as far as that's concerned, and that's where the silliness for the agent and Trey, they look kind of goofy as far as that's concerned. But it goes back to Casey's point, the optics. Constantly battling your own players, the optics are showing free agents. Because years ago it was, man, everyone's going to line up to play with Joe Burrow. Well, then we get free agents that like Trey Hendrickson, come into Cincinnati. They're going to play for the Bengals, but then free agents come into Cincinnati, and then, man, they're always battling the front office. Whether the front office is right or not, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is there's always seems to be something going on there. To Casey's point, optics aren't good in this particular situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not good for any future prospect wanting to come here. I do think that the other thing about this too, and I think we mentioned this at the beginning of the show, I don't remember who the Facebook commenter was, but you can also add a year to Trey and extend him to.
That's what they did with
33.
Whitworth.
Yeah.
That's what they did with Whitworth too, just to kind of, okay, we'll give you the extra year and we'll reevaluate from there.
Yeah. And I think he would be happy with that too. Like if you just did another same 1 year thing and maybe you add guarantees to that to make sure that that you're taken care of. But yeah, I mean, I think overall the Bengals, there's a happy medium to that situation. It's just a matter of waiting, to be honest with you. Here in spring training, I'm sure they'll come to some conclusion. We'll figure out what's going to happen. And I just hope that it's not retirement, because Bengals will be in serious trouble if it is.
All right. Staying in the NFL heavy show today. I think it's NFL heavy across all sports talk shows throughout the day.
Sure it is.
No doubt about it. And that's what, the draft, that's why it gets such a heavy number. It is wild too. And that's what makes the NFL king over all the other sports. When you really think about it, that's why I don't care about the Major League Baseball draft. I don't care about the NBA draft anymore. The NBA draft is coming up. I know that over the years for our audience in Dayton, we've paid attention to the NBA draft more than usual because, the Flyers program has put quite a few guys, in the pros, right? You had, Kostas Antetokounmpo, who was the last pick of the draft, what I would have said like 18 or 19. And then, of course, you have Obi Toppin, and then you get Tumani Kamara, and you're about to potentially have Deron Holmes. I know it hasn't been a formal announcement yet, but I know David Jablonski, an article came out recently where, he's revving up for the draft. He may not publicly announce it, but when that list comes out of those who have declared for the draft, his name will be on there. So we'll keep an eye on that. But the bottom line is, from that local aspect, we keep an eye on the draft. But I don't care about the NBA draft because I'm tired of watching guys get drafted and then they're not relevant for 2 or 3 years. Same thing with Major League Baseball. The Reds have the number 2 pick in the draft this upcoming season. Now, the reason that that's exciting to me, it's just because of how deep the Reds farm system is. Obviously, it's been depleted a bit for graduating guys up, pulling guys up, and obviously that's benefited the Reds well, on the main roster. But to continue to add depth to that from that standpoint is cool. Being a Dragons fan is cool because you get to see those guys right off the bat, like we're seeing with Rhett Lauder and Dayton right now with the Dragons and others. But the point is the Major League Baseball draft will never get a big number because you're not going to convince 2 to 3, 4, 5 million people to tune in to watch guys that won't be relevant for 4 or 5 years. You just won't get that. The NBA turning into that. The NFL draft is fascinating because you're watching guys that you hope that when you draft can turn your franchise around. The Cincinnati Bengals are a prime example of that. The Bengals to win 2 games 1 year, win 4 games the next, and then Super Bowl. That's why the NFL is king. That's why the NFL is healthy. That's why I love the whole entire NFL setup with the draft. I still have always kind of pitched a different draft format, which I'll get to that later on. But the bottom line is the fact that you could turn things around so quickly. That's why I hate when I hear out of Denver with the Broncos, we're still 2 or 3 years away from competing. The Cincinnati Bengals were at rock bottom. They had no quarterback. They weren't even sure who the heck they were going to, who's going to be the head coach. I know it was Zach Taylor, but there wasn't people sold on what Zach Taylor was doing in Cincinnati. You had guys getting a little bit older. That's why you had so many, disputes and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden it clicked. The youth movement came in. You get Burrow, you get T. Higgins, you get Logan Wilson, you get Jamar Chase, and then the rest is history. Then you start sprinkling in free agents. You start spending money. You bring in a Trey Hendrickson. Of course, you have a Mike Hilton, and the list goes on and on. You bring in DJ Reader. At the time, the Bengals Bengals did a great job of drafting, developing, and complementing it with free agents. You don't have to wait 2 to 3 years to turn things around. Now you could say, well, the Bengals won 2 games 1 year, 4 the next. They won 4 the next because Joe Burrow goes out in week 11. Now, I'm not saying that they would have won 9 or 10 games by any means, but the point is to go from 2 wins to 7 to 8 wins. That's a huge jump. And even that 7 to 8 win margin, you're not excited for 7 to 8 wins, but you feel like you're trending in the right direction. You feel like the future is bright. And you look at teams like the Chicago Bears right now. You look at that team. I love what the Bears have done, and I got to give them credit for this, is I hate when teams, well, we got to find out if we have our quarterback. All right, we have our quarterback. Now we'll spend money. Now we'll go get wide receivers. Well, how many quarterbacks, and I'm a fan of the Browns, and I've watched them kill so many Browns quarterback careers. How many times have the Browns drafted a quarterback in the top 10 or at the very top of the draft and then provided them with absolutely nothing to work with and then sit back with the palms in the air like, gee, I don't know why the hell that didn't work. You know, Joe Burrow comes in, you have Tyler Boyd, you have T. Higgins, you have Joe Mixon, bad offensive line, yes, but there was enough there for you to get a glimpse of Joe Burrow to know that, okay, this guy's the real deal, okay? All right, it's not like you know, you didn't draft T and you only had Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Boyd should not be your number one, even at that time, you know, and all that. It would have been really hard for Joe to show what he's capable of with only Tyler Boyd as an option as far as that's concerned. T emerged right off the bat. Good for them. You look at the Bears, the weapons are there for Williams to come in and show right away what he can do. You know, Kev all week or in the week heading into this draft has talked about whatever quarterback, 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round, whatever quarterback gets drafted by the Vikings, that quarterback's going to be the most successful because that quarterback's going to have more weapons than anybody else. I'm not a J.J. McCarthy guy, but if J.J. McCarthy is the guy, we're going to know right off the bat. J.J. McCarthy is not going to get the benefit of the doubt if by week 7 or 8, he's barely eclipsing 200 yards a game. He's throwing more picks than he is touchdowns. How can you not throw touchdowns with a team that has a okay offensive line, that has a very good run game, that has Justin Jefferson, that has Addison, that has a great tight end? There is no excuse for why J.J. McCarthy should go in there and struggle and me developing, you know, unless, you know, he played for a team that never passed the football because they were sitting on a Joe Burrow-like arm apparently and just decided not to use it. But hey, who am I to sit there and argue with Mr. Harbaugh as far as that's concerned? The bottom line is the NFL draft is king because you get these guys that come in and can make an impact right off the bat, which is why we opened up the first hour with a little confusion by the Bengals draft pick at number 18, because are you going all in to win this upcoming season? Or are you drafting for the future? You're telling us, T. Higgins, we're not trading you. We're forcing you to stay here, even though we can get a lot of draft compensation for you because we're going all in to win it this year. Same thing. That's going to be the message with Trey Hendrickson and others, going all in. But then you draft for the future when you could have got guys that can make, like Thomas and others, who can make an impact right away. Not mad at the pick, but at the same time, it's one of those where if you're going all in to try to win this year, you could have drafted a guy like Thomas that could help you win this year and be your wide receiver of the future and still check off all those boxes. I don't want to repeat that segment, but again, that's kind of where we're at with that as far as that's concerned. Now, the thing that's interesting about last night, and I'm going to bring Casey back in because I'm curious your thoughts on this. When the Atlanta Falcons were up, I always mispronounce this wide receiver's name, Adunze. Why can't I pronounce his name? Adunze. Okay. So Adunze, that was a no-brainer. That was a no-brainer. That should have been the pick for the Atlanta Falcons. And by the way, I loved when they got Kirk Cousins. I'm a Kirk Cousins guy because it's very hard to find a Joe Burrow. It's very hard to find a Patrick Mahomes or a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen. But it is easier to find a Kirk Cousins type of quarterback. And even those quarterbacks are tough to find, right? You have Kirk Cousins. You signed him to a 4-year, $100+ million deal. Like, you're not saying that that's your quarterback of the future, but that's your quarterback right now. And by right now, of the 4 years, if you could at least get 2 years of him, that's a pretty damn good outcome as far as that's concerned, as long as he's putting up the numbers that he was in Minnesota. And he does have the weapons in Atlanta to be able to do that. But to waste a first-round pick on a quarterback that's a little older, that does have injury history, and of course, talking about Michael Penix Jr., the thing that's fascinating about all of this is, let's say that the Falcons, who have this great idea of developing the quarterback over the next couple of years, and then he'll take over for Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins plays out the 4-year contract in Atlanta and Michael Penix Jr. takes over, he'll be older than when Brandon Weeden took over for the Cleveland Browns out of the draft. And that's just wild to me. That is absolutely insane. If Michael Penix Jr. is sitting there in the 2nd or 3rd round and you take a flyer on him, I don't mind that. but a top 10 pick, maybe even at the back end of the draft if you're thinking of moving on from Kirk Cousins, but not after signing him to a 4-year, $100 million contract. I have no clue what the Falcons are thinking. I know Dan Orlovsky of ESPN, the more I thought about it, the more I slept on it, the justification, I feel pretty good about it. Stop it. That means you drink before bed and you drink when you wake up. There's no way in hell that there's enough alcohol out there to convince you that that was the right move.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just the age thing either. That's what kills me about this situation. The dude had 4 season-ending injuries. The dude is not healthy either. Like, he's had injuries to his throwing shoulder. You just saw what he looked like in the championship game. He didn't look good under pressure. So already he's not a perfect prospect. I would understand if he had all these circumstances, was older, had the injury history, but was a perfect prospect, great at the quarterback position. He's not even that. I don't understand this pick at all. People that have watched the show and Off the Bench know that the Falcons are my Lions of 2 years ago. When we first started Off the Bench, I predicted the Lions to eventually take over the NFC North. I was just a year early. Same thing with the Falcons last year. So I expect the Falcons to be very good this year, to be honest with you. This was a time for the Falcons to get over the top. Rome Odunze being there was almost like a gift. It could have really catapulted that offense into another stratosphere. You're talking about Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Rome Odunze, not to mention some of the other guys that they got in free agency I thought were really good pickups too. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. But instead they go quarterback, and it's like you guaranteed $60 million to this guy year 1. Year 2 is $40 million. And then you can cut him after year 3 and he's only going to cost you $10 million against the cap, right? So it just doesn't make sense. Like, you had time to wait to still build out your roster, to flesh it out. And if you were going to make the pick there, you could have traded back. Like you said, it just makes no sense to pick him here at pick 8 in the draft. There was plenty of other options for them to make that make a lot more sense than what they did there. And to be honest with you, like, even if the Vikings and the Broncos were on these two guys, you're still getting your pick of Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. Like, that's not bad either. So to me, this was a doomsday scenario for the Falcons. I don't see how you could try to twist this to make this a good scenario in any way. Luckily for them, they have some. I think they still have like 3 or 4 top 100 picks still. So they can still try to flesh out that roster, but it is a head-scratching move, to say the least.
And the thing is with the first round, and again, whatever your philosophy is on the first round of the draft, but I think what a lot of fan bases want after the first round, when you have a pick, is when you wake up the next day, that your team is immediately better than they were the day before. And I think that, to go back to the Bengals quick, I don't know how many Bengals fans feel that they are significantly better today than what they were yesterday before going into the draft. I know that pick was for the future, right? Like, that's why some Bengals fans are down on that. That's why the Falcons right now are beyond down on this. You can argue every team feels better today than they did yesterday. There'll be a pocket of Bengals fans that don't believe that, and that's fair. But the Falcons, there's no way in heck you can convince me that they feel like they are better than they were yesterday. This move screams early 2000s. This was the way that teams operated in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, where, okay, we have our quarterback now, but we need to draft a quarterback that's going to kind of be the backup and kind of sit behind it. What you're doing is wasting it. Like, and by the way, Kirk Cousins, very good quarterback. I love him in Atlanta. I have no problem with him in Atlanta. But let's say Michael Penix Jr. really is the real deal. You haven't done yourself any favors, because now what you're going to do is you're going to let Kirk Cousins play for at least 2 of the next 4 years. Michael Penix Jr., let's say he's capable of being an elite level quarterback, and that means you just wasted 2 years of an elite level quarterback on a rookie deal. That means if you're the Falcons, you didn't have to sign Kirk Cousins. You could have had Michael Penix Jr. You could have dangled draft picks to the Cincinnati Bengals and try to get T. Higgins. And now you got T. Higgins and Bijan Robertson and Drake London and all this stuff. And the man, Atlanta looks like they are set for the immediate future, right? Now you have Michael Penix Jr. and now you have Kirk Cousins, and you wasted a first-round draft pick. And it's like, man, you better hit on the rest of the draft. You talked about all the opportunities they have coming up. You better hit. You got to overcompensate for the blunder that you just made. This is not the 90s. This is not the early 2000s where you draft a rookie quarterback, you let him sit for a couple of years, let him develop. This isn't the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre thing. Now you could say, well, it's working with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. Got to wait on that. Yes, they won with Jordan Love. Jordan Love looked okay, but unless Jordan Love is Aaron Rodgers, you can't sit there and say that that's the blueprint to follow, at least not in today's model. And for those that want to bring up Patrick Mahomes, it's a completely different scenario because you had Alex Smith that was there. They were already a playoff team. It wasn't developing Patrick Mahomes behind Alex Smith. It was Alex Smith. Again, that could have been another situation. If Alex Smith doesn't get hurt, you know how silly the Chiefs look? Having Patrick Mahomes sit behind Alex Smith for a few years and then breaks onto the scene year 3, and you're like, oh crap, that guy's been sitting behind him the entire time. Yeah, that's a problem. I have no clue why the Falcons did this. There's not one. Have you seen any justification for it? Have you heard anything to maybe make you think, okay, I could see that?
All I've heard is succession plan. That's it. That's the only justification for it, is that they needed a succession plan for Kirk Cousins, which just baffles me. It's ridiculous. By the way, I don't know if you're super deep into Twitter, NFL Twitter at all. Did you see the clip of Arthur Smith talking to the GM for the Falcons?
No, so I saw people tweeting about it. I've not seen that. I was scrolling through and I saw people referencing that. Educate me on this. So it's an actual clip.
Yeah, it's
an 80-year-old Arthur Smith who probably forced this decision. Let's be real.
Well, it doesn't look like he forced it. It looked like he was questioning what they were doing.
So the 80-year-old was the more competent individual in the room?
Yeah, the GM is sitting there kind of like doing some hand motions and kind of like gesturing, like moving on sort of to the next thing. And he's trying to justify his pick to the owner. Poor Arthur Smith. I mean, a guy that had been in control of the organization for the Falcons for however many years gives up his duties and then gets burnt like this. It's kind of slapped in the face to him.
That's brutal.
Tough.
That's tough. Brutal. And I've always said too, if you're a team that has like an old owner, you would like to think, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the elderly here, right? But like you would like to think there'd be a little bit more urgency if you're Arthur Smith to make sure you're making the best decisions possible. I mean, I don't have much time left on this earth. I want my team to win the Super Bowl. Same thing with Jerry Jones, which is why what's going on in Dallas is just mind-boggling to me as well. But that's crazy to me. And that's when you can't make up. It's one thing if you picked Odunze and it didn't work out. That's a real pain in the behind, right? Like that stinks. But that's the pick to make. Like it stinks that it wouldn't work out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, that was the right decision to make, even though that's why I hate when people do the whole, oh man, that was the wrong pick. Why? Because it didn't work out. The whole draft is a crapshoot. You're hoping that the way they looked in college will develop into the pro game, and you're hoping that their progression will continue. So, it's just one of those things that sometimes, like the Bengals with John Ross back then too, when they picked him. Wasn't the worst pick. It was not the result you wanted, but that's what you want. You wanted a speed guy to complement the likes of an AJ Green. It wasn't the worst idea, but they get mocked for it all the time. But I'm like, yeah, it didn't work out the way you wanted. And I'm not defending the pick by any means. I'm just saying, I just don't like when we immediately crap on teams who take the position that they need and then it doesn't work out. And then we say, oh, that was a bad pick. It just didn't work out. Sometimes, this is a bad pick though. There's no way that this can work out in a way even if Kirk Cousins goes down and he comes in and leads them to the playoffs, wins the division, wins a playoff game or two, I'm still going to say you still have a quarterback that is $100 million contract that you gave him. You could have had more weapons. You could have had more depth. There's no way that they could justify it when it's all said and done. So, all right, Kenner and Kev, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Happy Friday. It's been all NFL, and we have a couple more NFL things to get into today, and I don't even feel a little bit bad about it as far as that's concerned. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, if you are a Bengals fan and you're following this T. Higgins situation, keep an eye on what's going on in Philadelphia. I defended the Bengals' decision to say, you know what, T. Higgins is not a part of our long-term future, but we're going to go all in for one more year and maybe risk not getting draft compensation back for him, but we are going to go all in to try to win it this upcoming year. But if you pay attention to what's going on in Philadelphia, it might change your tune on how the Bengals are handling the T. Higgins situation. So we'll get to that when we come back. Kenner and Kev, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube.
All right, quick little break from the radio for just a second. We like to do this sometimes. I don't know if you've
drive the bus,
caught
man.
us on YouTube, but um, I am just doing some of the time stuff right now, and I think we're doing good, but we are over, I think, by 10 minutes.
Jesus.
So the next two segments, do you want to do half and half, or do you want to do like a touch and go, like a 5-minute one, or
Look at you using the
the
lingo.
Elliot
I like
lingo?
it. I like it. So hold up. What are we? We're over by 10 minutes. So what does that put us at? So that was the first segment of the second hour. So what? So there's 30 minutes left. So 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minuters.
Okay.
10 minuters. Is that a thing?
I think that's right.
We'll make it work. So we're still live right now, right?
Yeah, we're still live right
Cool.
now.
Let me take some time. I want to see what's coming in on some time for a touch. See, the audience is trained. Nate is trained. He goes, time for a touch and go. So it is what it is. Arthur Blank. I said Arthur Smith. My apologies. All caps, Roger. Appreciate him. There's that.
All caps, Rogers.
Yeah, I did think at first I saw all caps.
Yeah.
I would read it like a woman. I got really offended right away. I was like, this mofo is talking to me in all caps. We're going to have a problem. Turn to find out he talks to everyone in all caps. I like this guy. I like all caps Roger.
I love
Roger that.
He's always here in the mornings. He's like usually the first commenter.
Is he?
I make the stream and he's always the first one to make a comment. So shout out to you, Roger.
Oh yeah, I went at him right away, but it's just kind of that getting to know. But I appreciate Roger as far as that's concerned. But nonetheless, were you producing the day that we were talking about the Kroger situation?
The Kroger situation
with the Spectrum cable salespeople.
I don't know.
So I got blasted because so every time we go to our local Kroger, they put the Spectrum sales reps in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I went on about the Spectrum people. I don't like the Spectrum people coming up to me and all that. So there's a little miscommunication as far as who I was talking about. Yep. And it led to a big thing at work. I almost got canceled. I had to overcompensate, let people know I was not making fun of a particular group of people that they accused me of. I was talking about the Spectrum sales reps at Kroger that are interrupting me shopping for yogurt and everything else. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Someone just brought that up in that a little bit ago. I wanted to make sure that people knew I was not being insensitive, not even a little bit as far as that's concerned. But no. So we got 2 10-minute segments left?
Yep, that should do it for the show if we do 2 10-minute segments.
Cool. Hey, do we have any WWE fans in the chat, by the way? WWE is in SmackDown is tonight. Talking all this draft. The WWE draft is just big time. And there's going to be 30,000 people lined up outside the Heritage Bank Center, just lining up, for the number 1 overall pick. But if we have any WWE fans in there, we have some tickets. How do you guys do contests here? Do you guys do contests here?
We do.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We have a text line. We could just take advantage of that if you want. But we have a couple pairs of tickets left for SmackDown in Cincinnati tonight. They're digital. We can shoot them right over to you, of course. So if you text, do you have something or you want me to just use the text line?
So how about this? If you are in the Discord, and I'm going to put the Discord link here in the chat in just a second. If you are in the Discord, message me and that will enter you into the challenge.
Look at you.
Okay. That'll enter you into the giveaway. And I'll go from there and I'll just put it in a wheel and spin the wheel. And
there's
then,
a wheel.
Yeah.
You guys are a lot cooler than we are, dude. We just text
names.
us and we'll just randomly pick a name. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We'll do it at the end of the show once we're off the radio, and I'll put it on air for everyone to see. So you got to do it here in the next. Well, do you want to actually, are you trying to sell this to the radio fans as well? How long until?
Forget the radio people, man. This is for our Chatterbox.
This is for Chatterbox.
I got to kiss some ass of these guys. I got to get them to carry over into when we're on at 3 every day. So yes, let's take care of the guys in the chat. Again, if you don't like wrestling, that's totally fine, man. But SmackDown in Cincinnati tonight, CM Punk going to be there. I have to ask, because Nate just said in all caps, he's going the all caps route too. What did Elliot do? He says, do not let Elliot do another giveaway. What did
Elliot
just story there?
The Elliot, I think he kind of, I don't want to say panics a little bit when things get off the rails, but he panicked a little bit. We had tickets to give away, and he just looked at a bunch of names in our chat and just pulled them in, and then he asked Tom to just say yay or nay to these names, and Tom just went yay, yay, yay,
Too
nay
many
on one
yays?
random guy. Huh?
Too many yays?
Too
Oh,
many-
so you made Tom be the bad guy. So,
yeah, made Tom be
uh,
the bad guy, and he's not very good at coming up with the idea of how to do the giveaways. So I think I have a pretty good system here. You message me on Discord. I'm gonna put the Discord link here in the chat. You message me if you want the tickets. I'm gonna put your name in a wheel, and we're gonna spin the wheel at the end of this thing once we're off the air.
So that we're getting more of an explanation on this too, by the way. So don't let Elliot do another giveaway. Nate goes on to say they had 4 tickets to give away to a Reds game, and he gave them to 4 different people. So 1 ticket per person. Couldn't even bring another person of your choice. That is quite the. Now, by the way, I don't mind going to Reds games by myself. I really do not mind. I love going to a ball game by myself every once in a while. But that's because I have no friends. But I'm just saying sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you don't have a choice. But it was preposterous, as they're saying. I've never heard that word used more until I've tuned into you guys.
We say it quite a bit.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's
I don't
very
know
impressive.
which one of us started it, but it was either me or Reed. I don't know who did it, but it's in our vocabulary. There's some words that are just always stuck in our brain. Early on in the show, we would do this thing where I can't remember what the phrase was, but we had a jar where we had put $1 in the jar every time we said it.
Like a swear jar.
Almost like a swear jar. Someone in the chat's gonna have to remind me what that was, but
Oh, I can cuss right now, right?
yeah, if you want
I can
to.
say shit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I can't say shit on radio, but that's the shit talking will stop right there. I just had to get it out of my system. I've cussed one time on air, and I didn't even realize that I did it. At the time, the producer had to say, "Hey, you said shit, right?" And I'm like, I did not know that. But as heated as I get, because I get into it with callers and stuff, I've never cussed except for that one time, and that was like years and years ago. So is what it is. All right, let's get back to this radio thing. So just give me the countdown.
Yep.
Hold up, time out. What did I tease? Did I tease anything? Oh, AJ Brown. The AJ Brown thing.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Justin Kinner back with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports. We are off and rolling here on a Friday. NFL draft rounds 2 and 3 coming up later on tonight, and it's basically been an NFL-dominated show today. Don't even feel a little bit bad about it. So, Casey, I always wonder when Kev and I are doing the show from Dayton, and I'm going all hot take on the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm always curious the eye rolling that's going on, the this guy, all that other stuff. I'm always curious what's going on in this room as I am just laying in my hot takes on the Cincinnati Bengals. So now I get to sit across from you. I get to see it all up close and personal. But there was a take I had the other day that I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. Okay, that's the one thing. If I'm going to be as outspoken as I am, I have no problem saying, yeah, I was wrong. But there's one take that I have consistently stood by, and I've stood by it for years, that when the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, and then were, blessed with getting Jamar Chase a year later, everyone said, man, they're going to run the AFC North. These 3 are going to run the AFC North for the next 10 years. I said, the Bengals have a very good chance to run the AFC North for the next 10 years. But I would bet my house on it that it will not be those 3 dominating the AFC North for the next 10 years. Not because I'm a hater, not because I'm a Browns fan, but because there's no way, as the contract values for wide receivers have continued to climb. All right. And the fact that you can't brag about having 2 number 1 wide receivers on your roster, but yet not being able to pay both receivers as number 1 wide receivers, that logic has to come into play at some point. And the one thing that has never happened in the history of the National Football League is you have never had the highest paid quarterback in the NFL paired up with the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs, they didn't want to get rid of Tyreek Hill. They had to get rid of Tyreek Hill. And this idea that the Bengals, there's no way in hell that they could have got rid of T. Higgins. There's no way in hell they can get rid of Jamar Chase. Every argument you can make as to why the Bengals, there's no way in hell they'll get rid of Jamar Chase, is the exact same arguments that Chiefs fans are making back when the idea of not extending Tyreek Hill in Kansas City was brought up. There's no way you move on from Tyreek Hill. And this isn't a shot, so brace yourselves. Kansas City at least won a Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. So the idea of splitting those 2 up was even more preposterous. There we go. Put $1 in the jar. That was even more preposterous than the idea of splitting up a quarterback wide receiver combo that has not won a Super Bowl. Now they have gotten there. So again, sounds like a shot. It's not. I'm just trying to make that point a little extra as far as no one in Kansas City thought that they would split those 2 up. So now you're in a situation with Cincinnati where you have Joe Burrow, the highest paid quarterback in the history of the NFL, at least as of right now, right? You have Jamar Chase, who is sitting back and just laughing at everybody. They're laughing at, of course, Brown right now in Detroit is 30 million with 77 million guaranteed, the most guaranteed money for a wide receiver ever. He's just sitting back with his feet up, just laughing because he knows as every receiver gets paid, just like Joe Burrow last year, watching, obviously Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert get taken care of. He was like, oh man, when they get paid, I get paid. Oh, he got paid a little more. Now I'm going to get paid a little more. That's Jamar Chase right now in this situation. So I've said that, okay, Jamar Chase is going to be the highest paid wide receiver in football at some point, right? Joe Burrow will be a top 5 paid quarterback, as quarterbacks, continue to pass him and all that type of stuff. But man, that's pretty damn expensive. But there's no way in hell you can keep T. Higgins. There's just no way. And I said this on the show the other day. T. Higgins, this is his last season. There's not even a question about it. The Cincinnati Bengals are making the right decision there, as much of a tough one as it is. But then there's a report that came out yesterday, right before the NFL draft, that the Philadelphia Eagles and A.J. Brown have started contract extension talks with the Philadelphia Eagles, okay? And this is according to WIP sports radio station over in Philadelphia, the sports radio station over in Philadelphia. Now, keep in mind, in 2022, Brown signed a $100 million extension with the team. And here we are, not even a full 2 years later, and they're already talking about extending him again, which I promise you this, he watched what happened with Brown over in Detroit, and he's going to want that number. I am in 100% agreement that the Cincinnati Bengals would be foolish to try to keep T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow, because what you hear is we're going to have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. What I hear is you're going to have Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase at the expense of whom? At the expense of what position group? At the expense of how many star players? How many Hendricksons and Bates and Mixons and Higgins? How many of those guys have to move on for you to justify keeping those 3? I have no clue how serious these reports are of the Eagles sitting back and getting these contract negotiation talks rolling with A.J. Brown. But they either have to be moving on for DeVonta Smith, or you're going to have a quarterback or a wide receiver making $31 million, a quarterback making $52 million, and DeVonta Smith making $25 million. That is an absurd number. There's no way in hell that number could work. But apparently you have one of the best front offices in football with the Philadelphia Eagles who believe that they can make it work. And if they can make it work, does that change your view as Bengals fans that, well, if they could do it, why can't we keep Higgins? Why can't we keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow? Because I was wrong the other day. I said there's no way in hell there's not a team out there that would even sniff trying to have 2 max paid or highly paid wide receivers with a top 5 paid quarterback. And yet, not even a full 24 hours later, the Eagles come out with this. Casey, does it change your view at all when it comes to T. Higgins? And again, I'm going to make sure I preface this. Bengals fans, I'm not putting you in a position to say you don't want T. Higgins. Of course you do. But from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense. But if you see a business blueprint that the Eagles could potentially lay out there, because Jalen Hurts, a top 5 paid quarterback, A.J. Brown would be the top paid wide receiver in football, and you have DeVonta Smith making $25 million a year. Your thoughts on this? Does it change your view at all? Does it change your mind at all? If the Eagles find a way to get this done, does it change your view at all of should the Bengals maybe consider sitting back at the negotiation table with the T. Higgins?
Well, it's not even just that they signed these receivers either. We're talking about guys that they signed on top of that as well to the Eagles. Bryce Huff, they gave a big deal to him as an edge rusher. They signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They brought him back. Saquon Barkley, they brought him back.
I forgot about that. That was the biggest. That was huge.
And somehow they're able to do this. Their front office is quite honestly very amazing. To be honest with you, they were able to pull this all off. Now, they did have Jason Kelce retire. That's a substantial contract off the books. They are able to structure it in a way to where DeVonta Smith is, yes, getting paid $25 million a year for those 3 years, but that also includes year 4, 5 already on his rookie deal. So it's really more like, I think, like $20 million per year if you really want to extrapolate it all out. They were able to give him the extension that T wants, that 25 per year. It's just that they were able to structure it in ways to where it makes sense for the team. I was shocked when I saw the A.J. Brown contract, to be honest with you. I thought that was,
because I said the other day, I was like, AJ Brown, I think you were producing that day. I said AJ Brown will not be with the Eagles next year, and then not even 24 hours later, I see this, and I'm like, well, there's egg on my face. But even if they get it done, it doesn't mean that my take was off point, because it's shocking to everyone because it doesn't make sense. Just like it wouldn't have made sense for T. Jamar and Joe Burrow to be locked up long term, but it doesn't make sense until it makes sense. It doesn't make sense because we've never seen a team do it. If the Eagles do it because everyone loves the Eagles and they love Howie, they love the front office of the Eagles, we'll say, man, that's a genius front office. It very well could be a bad decision. I think it'd be a bad decision if they did it, just as much as I think it'd be a bad decision if the Bengals do it. But I do think there's a pocket of fans out there that if they watch the Eagles do it, they're going to sit back and say, why are we just letting T walk out the door when you're watching what the Eagles are doing over there? And I think that would be a fair argument, even though as you're diving into the weeds as far as the contract structure is concerned, that would be the difference maker as far as that goes.
Yeah, and the thing is too, the Eagles, one, they are a little bit different than the Bengals. They have a really good track record of drafting guys and being able to move and be flexible within the draft. Think about who they've drafted the last couple of years to kind of just solidify that defensive line, even without the guy that they just signed to a 3-year deal, the Huff. They were able to get Jalen Carter and the other kid from Georgia. Like, that defensive line is still very, very good. They just signed Quinion Mitchell. Not signed, but they drafted the kid.
Yeah.
I mean, those are great pickups for the Eagles. Like, they always just seem to find guys here as of late where it's just like, yeah, they got a steal there. And they've done that now for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's paid off for them. That's why I think they're able to do what they're able to do right now, not invest a whole lot of money into their defense, but find players in the draft to help supplement that. And that's why they're able to pay guys on the offense the way that they are right now. If you're asking me if the Bengals should do something similar, well, they could start by trading away Trey Hendrickson, I guess, and getting draft capital, and then starting that process of drafting well and following in the same similar footsteps. The problem is we have yet to see what the true end result is. As of right now, they're exactly like the Bengals, the Super Bowl losers. So we'll have to wait and see, right?
If you polled fans across the country, they would feel better about the Eagles' future than the Bengals. And I'm here to tell you, I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. Jalen Hurts, I'm not sold on Jalen Hurts. One thing about Cincinnati, second worst. I mean, this is how crazy you fans are. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but this is how much you believe in your quarterback. Second worst defense in the NFL last year, second worst run game in the NFL last year. And I don't think they've been big splash free agent moves mixed with the pick from last night either. But there's not one fan out there that feels like, oh, we're taking a step backwards. I mean, you fans are feeling fine going into next season with a slightly upgraded second worst defense in the NFL and a slightly upgraded second worst run game in the NFL. As long as Joe Burrow's out there, all is good. The difference is the reason the Bengals should not change their game plan, even though the Eagles could potentially do this, is Joe Burrow doesn't, no disrespect to T, he doesn't need T. I think Joe Burrow's good enough to win. Like, if you look at Patrick Mahomes, they took Tyreek Hill away. He's won an MVP. He's won 2 Super Bowls without him. And I think Joe Burrow's that caliber of quarterback where you don't want to see T go, but you don't need T Higgins.
Yeah.
You may not want to hear this. You don't need Jamar Chase either, but you're not going to split those two up. I get that. But at the same time, Joe Burrow doesn't need elite level wide receivers around him. I do believe Jalen Hurts does. And I think that's why the Eagles are exploring this, because they feel it's kind of like the Dolphins. They like Tua, but they feel Tua needs a Tyreek Hill. Tua needs a Jalen Waddle. You know, you look at Jalen Hurts, he needs a Smith. He needs an A.J. Brown. I think the Bengals need to be careful. If the Chiefs can look at Patrick Mahomes and say, we don't need a Tyreek Hill, I think the Bengals need to have as much confidence in their quarterback as the Chiefs did in theirs and say, we love T, just like the Chiefs love Tyreek Hill, but we don't need Tyreek Hill and we don't need T. Higgins. Kenner and Cap, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. All right, final portion of the show as we wrap things up here today on a Friday before we head into the weekend. There's still a lot more to keep an eye on in the draft. Now, I had a lot of people kind of poke fun at me. Hey, who'd the Browns pick last night? They didn't pick anyone. Look, the one thing you guys need to learn about me, there's not a Browns joke I haven't heard, and there's not a Browns joke that will faze me. Let's just put it that way. You're right. The Browns have not had a first-round draft pick. And, you know, I see a lot of Browns fans get defensive and say, well, Look at the Rams. The Rams have a Super Bowl. I love the Browns, but let's be clear. The Browns, I love the way they operate. I know this sounds absolutely insane. The Browns with their cash-rich owner, that matters. Okay. And if the Browns had a Joe Burrow, and I do look, but you guys can mock me all you want. Deshaun Watson, when healthy, is a top 10 quarterback, has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback. We saw it in Houston. People acted like, oh man, he was out for 2 years. He's washed. He's 26. Now he's 28. He's not old. It's still in there. The guy, horrible human being off the field, never justify that. But as far from a quarterback standpoint, if he could stay healthy when he's out there on the field, and this is why Bengals fans, when you want to bring up the health of Deshaun Watson, I highly suggest you just sit this one out just for a few moments, right? Like, I get it. I don't think that the injuries with Watson and Burrow are the same, but whether it's injury or bad luck for Burrow, he has something. Like, there's always something with Burrow. So maybe sit out on the injury talk when it comes to Watson, but I could talk about it because he's the quarterback of the team that I follow. Watson has to stay healthy, but when he's healthy, they're 5-1 last year. 5-1 last year. The last, both times that ticked me off is he had his best outing against the Tennessee Titans, 300 yards, multiple touchdowns, dominant performance outside of that first play in the first half, which was atrocious. I'll be honest. Okay. Then he's out for about a month, comes back, gets rolling a bit, has his best performance as a Brown, dominates against the Baltimore Ravens on the road at Baltimore, leads the Browns to a win, multiple touchdowns, the 2-point conversion, rushing yards, did absolutely everything for the Browns in that second half against the Ravens, and then he's out for the season after that. If that Deshaun Watson is out there on that field with that wide receiver group, with that offensive line, with this run game, with the number one defense in the NFL. And if I could just maybe take my homer cap off and say top 5 defense, because I'm a little concerned about what I saw in the playoffs, that's still a hell of a contending team right there. But when it's all said and done, the Browns gave up a ton to go after their quarterback. They have him. They're not shying away from it. You already have Andrew Berry talking about contract extension. Now, for those of you out there that think, man, why would they give him a contract extension when you have as much money guaranteed and locked up into him as you do? This is the situation the Cowboys are in. Sometimes you got to extend it to stretch that money out a bit to open up opportunities to do what the Browns have done. The Browns and Bengals don't operate the same. And now insert your joke there. Ha ha. All right. Now we move on. Keep in mind, the bottom line is that Cleveland's cash-rich owner is the reason why they've been able to overcome not having these first-round draft picks as of late. They've been able to rework contracts, signing bonuses, money up front that the Cincinnati Bengals don't have. I'm not picking on the Bengals. I'm just using the two Ohio teams just in a back and forth. These two teams cannot be any different as far as how they operate, but both are two of the top teams in the NFL, whether you want to admit it or not. I know people want to say the Browns is the Browns. The Browns is the Browns would be having your starting quarterback go out, your backup quarterback go out, your third quarterback not working, and then having to bring out Joe Flacco. To me, that sounds like the Browns is the Browns until you look at the fact that they won 11 games. They beat both number one seeds in both the AFC and NFC. Dominate the way that they did with the number one defense. They overcame so dang much. The Browns is finding reasons to lose games and not make the playoffs. They found a way to overcome those problems and make the playoffs. You can't sit there and hold them to that same standard. The only thing that'll tear them completely down is Deshaun not being able to stay healthy. The guy's a bum of a person. I have to keep throwing out that disclaimer because if I don't, you guys are going to steamroll me with all your arguments and then we're going to get sidetracked. So I have to continue to throw out the disclaimer. You're not going to get me with, wow, you support that bum human being. No, I don't. But he's the quarterback of the team I follow. And it is what it is. I joke with Kev all the time that when people want to try to twist who I am as a fan and say you're a bad person because of who your quarterback is, I've never once had a teacher or my parents say, show me who your quarterback is, and that'll show me who you are as a person. They've said that about my friends, right? Like, when you're young and your parents and your teacher, they have all this, infinite words of wisdom. Show me who your friends are, and that'll show me who you are. I've never once heard that about quarterbacks until Deshaun Watson became the Browns quarterback. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, show me who your quarterback is, and that'll show me who you are. I'm going to show you a couple birds. That's all I got to say as far as that's concerned. But the bottom line is Cleveland does not have a first round. They did not have a first round pick. They have some important picks coming up. The way Bengals fans get nervous about when they draft offensive linemen is the way I get when the Browns draft wide receiver. The Browns can't draft wide receiver. They got so fortunate that they were able to take a 5th round pick and turn it in to Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was expensive years ago, Casey. I mean, I remember when they acquired him, that was an expensive wide receiver. Now you see Devontae Smith, 25, A.J. Brown about to get extended. You see Brown with the Lions, who's, sitting at 30. Jamar's about to get his. Justin Jefferson's about to get his. And if they extend Cooper at his age, talking about $25 million a year, it's still going to be a bargain as these wide receiver numbers keep going up. And A.J. Brown or Amari Cooper, say what you want. Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the AFC North, no doubt about it. But the guy that's led the division in receiving yards and touchdowns the last 2 years, Amari Cooper. All right, durability is key. Being out there is key. By the way, give me Jamar Chase over Amari Cooper. Don't roll your damn eyes, Casey. Do not roll your dang eyes. But facts are facts. I'm just throwing out facts. I can't help that the facts are the facts. But there is one guy I really want the Browns to target. There is a guy I really want the Browns to get. I like the addition of Jerry Jeudy alongside Amari Cooper, but there is a guy in this draft that I think that if they are fortunate enough to land, that could potentially be your number 2, maybe your number 1 if it pans out. The Puka Nacua thing really drives me nuts with the Rams. Like, how lucky do they have to be? I mean,
know, right?
You want to prove that you're the Rams? Find a Puka in the 5th round, and that sounds very weird. But the name I really want is Keon Coleman, the wide receiver out of Florida State. There was times throughout the year where you had many analysts out there say he is on par with the Marvin Harrison Jr., which is why it's wild that he is not even in the conversation in the first-round picks. I still would not take him over Marvin Harrison Jr., but Marvin Harrison Jr. and Aduze and all those guys, they're off the board. If the Browns can find a way to get a playmaker for cheap moving forward, if he ends up being really, really good, you move off the Amari Cooper deal. You could trade Jerry Jeudy or move on from Jerry Jeudy, do what you got to do there. But I like the idea of getting a Keon Coleman. Hopefully it's a lot better than the Corey Coleman situation the last time they went that route. So, yeah.
So I'm assuming that weapon is the direction most Browns fans want to go in. Is that correct? Defense has pretty much got all 12 or all 11 players, all starters pretty much figured out.
This is one of those where they have a lot of really, I mean, look, they're stacked on defense. They're very good on offense. The quarterback thing, I'm still not a fan of them not keeping Flacco, okay? But right now, if you draft for the future, you could justify it, okay? You can go offensive line. You could do that stuff. Okay, great, whatever. They're still good enough to contend for the division and be a playoff contender. As long as you have an elite level defense like that, you are a Super Bowl contender. You guys can mock that, but that's just the reality of it, right? So it has to be, this is what I talked about with the Bengals earlier. With this pick coming up, you have to be able to select somebody that is going to help you win right away and be a piece for the future. I don't believe in drafting just for this upcoming season and then worrying about it later. Like, Coleman, to me, is a piece that helps them win right away and could potentially be a solution at wide receiver long-term. If he pans out, it opens up the door to move on from Amari Cooper. That frees up 20 to 25 mil in cap space. Now you have a great rookie wide receiver, on rookie contract deal moving forward. And now you could reallocate those dollars elsewhere. You look at Zadarius Smith and obviously Myles Garrett. He's going to be due for a major extension coming up. They got to find money to be able to kind of piece that together so that we don't have a situation like the Bengals where he's threatening retirement at this point. But yeah, Cleveland, they have a lot of they're drafting for depth and best player available. And to me, that would be Keon Coleman if he's available as far as that's concerned. They are a team that has to capitalize on this roster right now. They have a cash-rich owner that's going to be able to stop the bleeding, initially. But the lack of first-round draft picks over the years will catch up with them eventually. But the reason that the Rams don't care about the crap hole that they're in right now is because they have a Super Bowl to show for it. They gave up so many first-round draft picks. They haven't had a pick since, 16? Since the Sean McVay era, they haven't even had a first-round pick at all. People mock that. I know Kev, when him and I do the show together, he hates that about the Rams. But they have a Super Bowl to show for it. You could do questionable things, a lot of weird things. If it results in a Super Bowl, who am I to question it? The Browns are following the Rams model, but following a team that's won a Super Bowl without actually achieving winning the Super Bowl, I'm not as impressed. The Browns, I love what they're doing, but damn it, they need to win a Super Bowl. And getting knocked out by a rookie quarterback in the first round of the playoffs last year with the number 1 defense in the NFL, it's not a good way to do it. I could be critical of my team. I wasn't impressed with that exit from the playoffs. I'm really curious to see what they do with the draft. I'm a big fan of Keon Coleman. We'll see what happens.
So I like Keon Coleman as well. I think he's a bigger bodied receiver, can play both your X, Y, Z. He's versatile, right? I think in terms of production, like actual stats, it's not nearly similar to like the Marvin Harrisons, but he's very talented, young. And that's a key factor when looking at receivers, especially in the draft, is most of the time you want a guy that's very young and had an early breakout age in the college level. Did he perform when he was very young? Because he's still got room to grow, right? Keon Coleman fits that bill to me. I think that would be a good pickup for the Browns. If you're not getting Keon Coleman, I think Jalen Polk is a great consolation prize to that. I think Ladd McConkey is also another great consolation prize to that. I would be afraid of Roman Wilson. I think that's another guy that I would be. Is
that a guy you guys are looking at? Is that a guy?
Yeah, that's a guy that I don't really want the Bengals to select, but he's a bigger bigger bodied slot receiver type role player. We'll see if the Bengals go for that. What are your thoughts on like a smaller slot guy? Because I know you guys have Elijah Moore, but he didn't really do a whole lot the last season, right? He was kind of just
He got hot when Flacco was out there. It is interesting. Like the thing that's wild about Flacco, and look, I've semi-defended Deshaun Watson to a certain extent, right? Like Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, they click. Okay.
Yeah.
Flacco and Amari Cooper, they clicked. I'm sorry, Flacco and Amari Cooper, they clicked. But what Flacco took, David Njoku and made him look like a top 5 tight end in football.
Yeah.
Like that's the concern I have. Like they have it. Like I do think Njoku is a top 5 tight end in football.
I do too.
But he doesn't look like it with Deshaun. And that's the concern with Deshaun Watson. That's the concern I have. So when you look at what Deshaun brings out the best in Amari Cooper, but he didn't bring out the best in Elijah Moore, but Flacco did. So, it's going to be interesting to see the flow of the offense and like who benefits from whom being out there, because we saw an explosive top 5 looking offense. That's why I wish Joe Burrow and the Bengals were healthy, because a healthy Bengals team against a healthy I shouldn't say healthy, a healthy Bengals team against a Joe Flacco-led Browns team last year, that would have been a hell of a shootout. That would have been a hell of a back and forth. And Watson, I need to see more of that to be as confident in him as I was Flacco. But yeah, like that's kind of where I'm at. I do think Elijah Moore showed that he can play at a high level, but you have Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy who have a ceiling that you would like them to reach. But again, that's a lot of hoping, and hoping, as I've always said, is not a game plan.
Yeah, I'm just looking at his final season with Houston, where he was on that MVP type run.
Yep.
He had Brandon Cooks and William Fuller, so basically 2 outside guys, really tearing it up for him. I think if you're Keenan Coleman might be the best solution there. Then if that's the case, because I was thinking maybe you would want maybe more of a slot guy because of just how Elijah Moore ended up turning out for you guys. But if he does better with 2 true outside receivers, much like what Joe Burrow is with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, Keon Coleman is, I think, a slam dunk pick there.
They also have the Tillman kid from Tennessee last year. I love the Tillman grab from Tennessee last year. That just didn't work out either. But again, it's the wide receiver to the Browns is the offensive line to you guys, to your Bengals. Like it drives me nuts. Like that was the New England Patriots. They could draft offensive linemen in their sleep. They could be handed Jamar Chase and find a way to screw it up. And sometimes that's the Browns, man. Like they got handed OBJ, who didn't draft him, obviously. They couldn't make that work. Like Amari Cooper has been the only thing that has worked at wide receiver in Cleveland, as far as that's concerned. We only have a few more minutes remaining. Casey, I'm curious your thoughts outside of the Bengals. And we've talked a lot of Bengals. We've talked, of course, about the Falcons. What was your favorite pick last night for a non-Bengals team? While you're thinking of that, I'll start. The pick that I liked the most, as far as I'm concerned, was the Jaguars pick, getting that top wide receiver that I kind of liked for Cincinnati, if that was the case. But I'm not 1,000,000% sold on Trevor Lawrence, but the dude has no more excuses. If he's not playing at an MVP, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes-like level this upcoming season, the Jags, I don't know, man. That's a wild situation that they have there. I like Trevor Lawrence, but he has not lived up to that. If they got him a nice receiver last night, I really am curious to see how the Jags use that. But I thought that was a pick. That was a very sneaky good pick for the Jags last night, as far as that's concerned.
For me, I think that the Quinyon Mitchell's the Eagles was very spectacular for them. That was elite pickup for them. One thing that many people will probably just go like, maybe a bit of a reach, but I think will do really well. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. It just
typical, right?
What they're building there, they're building a track team. They've got Marquise Hollywood Brown, who runs a ridiculous blazing 40 time, and Xavier Worthy, who just broke that 40 time record this year. I mean, they're building something there that makes me a little nervous with all the speed that they got there. That's another pick that I just find very underrated, that I think many people are going to look back on and be like, man, how could we let this happen? Other than that, the other pick I think is really, really good for this specific team. I think it's the Bears and Rome Odunze. Just the fact that he fell past the Falcons and that now they have a trio of receivers there, that just makes that Bears offense just, I mean, borderline almost perfect what you would want. And you got your quarterback now, got two great offensive tackles. Interior might be a little shaky, but I'm sure they'll get that figured out here in the rest of the picks in the draft. They got a good tight end, three great receivers, a decent running game. I like that pick a lot as well.
Seattle, I liked the Byron Murphy pick at 16. I mean, to have him so close, I mean, right there, like, so close for you guys.
So close.
But I like him a lot because of what they did last year when they got Weatherspoon. Weatherspoon was great last year. I was a big fan of Weatherspoon coming out of Illinois. And I thought that was a big pickup for them. I mean, the Seahawks have had some quiet, sneaky good drafts the last couple of years, getting Jackson Smith and Jigba last year and getting Weatherspoon in the first round was huge. And then to get Murphy the way that they did last night at pick number 16 or whatever it was. I mean, they're quietly adding a lot of elite young pieces. And I thought that they were going to be the one that, if the Falcons didn't take Michael Penix Jr., I thought that that's where he was going to potentially end up. And you think of the wide receivers unit that they have there. I mean, that's pretty damn impressive. And you have Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, who they drafted recently as well. The Seahawks are quietly piecing some things together. And they added Sam Howell in the offseason. So interesting nonetheless. But yeah, I like the Seahawks pick, and I definitely like the Jaguars pick with them as far as adding a pass catcher. That's huge for Trevor Lawrence as far as that's concerned. So yeah, but that's it for time, right? That's what I thought.
That's it for time.
Well, this was fun. This was fun getting to hang out in the Chatterbox Studios. And you know what? I think this is the longest I've ever gone without my phone. My phone is sitting right over there. When I came in, was talking with Tom. I put my phone down, came over here all excited, got the show started, and it was the point of no return. I have no clue what's waiting for me on my phone over there. No.
Oh, no.
So, we'll see. But I do think that's the longest I've ever gone without my phone. My phone is always glued to my hand as far as that's concerned. But no, Casey, thank you for working a little overtime today. Thank you. Shout out to Trace for, giving me the door to come in here and, do the show from the studio. Apparently this is not how it's going to look here in about a week.
Yeah, I think we're going to change it up and make it more, like I said, round table, more bar, like
a little sports bar type of setup, huh?
Yeah. Just, I don't know if it's. We're going to do it more traditional round table look. It is round table right now, but we're going to make it look that way.
Well, I'm excited for that. I'm excited. We're still on the air next week, right? Well, we're on the air, but are we on? It doesn't matter. That's off the air stuff. Guys, thank you. Have a great weekend. First round of the draft in the books. A lot of big-time picks coming up for the Bengals. We'll recap all of that. Winners and losers of the draft coming up on Monday. We'll talk about all of that. Thank you, everyone. Until next week, it's been the Kinner and Kev Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. So we're done? Are we still on YouTube?
We are still on YouTube. I've only had one person message me saying that they're interested in these WWE
Not a lot
tickets.
of WWE fans, huh? And that's totally fine. I got a pair of tickets for that one person. We can give them let's do another 2 minutes. We'll wait 2 more minutes and see. By the way, who's cutting that up? Is Trace jumping on that? Is that you?
I'll be cutting it up right now.
Oh, okay. No, that's all right. That's all right. But while you're doing that, then I'll take a look.
So first time on the show and in here in the studio. Yep. How did it go for you?
Oh, I love this. Your studio is way better than ours. Your studio is way better. Now, actually, I mean, we love our studio too, but I've been there for 10 years. So it's the same old studio, right? But I love the camera work. I love the desk. I love the whole production of everything. You guys kill it. Do a great job as far as that goes. Yeah. Super producer Case Mack. That's coming in from Ohio Lakers 513, by the way.
Thank you, Ohio.
Let's see. Oh my God. Mouse Cop is going to love this. C-Box turning into Barstool Sports. Shit, yeah. There we go. That's how I hate that I've taken advantage of cussing 4 times and I've used the same cuss word every single time. I mean, I need to kind of spread my wings a little bit.
Yeah, you're allowed to say whatever the hell you want.
There we go. Shane Combs says, if the Eagles did not hit on the past couple of drafts, I don't think it would be possible to do what they are currently doing. A lot of guys fell perfectly to them. Shane, yeah. And this is the thing too. So earlier when I said if Bengals keep an eye on what's going on with the Eagles, if it changes their perspective of what the Bengals should do with T. Higgins, what works for the Eagles is not the same thing as what would work for the Bengals because everything is situational. That's why I don't like market value in the NFL or what a trade value would be from a draft pick perspective. It's all about what that individual is and their value to you and what you're able to do. T. Higgins right now does like if Jamar Chase wasn't as good as what he was, T. Higgins would be front and center, the priority as far as that's concerned. But because you got Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow just got taken care of. You have the second worst, or last year, the second worst defense in the NFL, and you lose DJ Reader. And now, of course, you have this drama with Hendrickson. Their priorities have shifted. That has to be where they direct their financials towards. Those are problems that the Eagles aren't dealing with, which means they are in a position to be able to prop up a Devontae Smith and, of course, an A.J. Brown. So, yeah, things had to go right for the Eagles as far as that's concerned. So, no doubt about that. Nate says, Casey, so next week, off the bench is only on Monday and Tuesday, correct?
That is correct. Only on Monday and Tuesday. I think it's only Monday. I think we're going to get started with rearranging the studio. It's not a full-on rebrand, but it is a revamping, a restyling of the show, restructuring of the morning show, kind of getting rid of the look of it, because it's too separated. It's not it's too focused in on one central figure, and I think we're trying to give everyone an equal level of field, I guess, is how we're gonna try to describe that. I don't want to say like a bar stool conversation, like you're at a bar, but that's basically what we're going to try to aim for, is more sports bar conversation. You're going to see us all kind of just hang out and make it a little less official looking, I guess. Make it more.
You don't want to be official looking?
We do want to be official. We just don't want it to be.
Look, the thing I've always said about sports talk, and my goal, I'm sorry to cut you off, my bad, but I've always said this too. The only difference between me and the people listening is I have a mic in front of me. Like at the end of the day, I'm 5'5" and 200 pounds. I am not a freak of nature athletically. Okay. I didn't play professional sports or college sports. I'm not bringing expertise to the table that you guys don't have at home. I just have a mic. So I'm a fan just like everyone listening. And that's what makes this fun. So with you guys being sports fans as well and providing great content for all your listeners, it's just an opportunity to come together and just sports fans sitting around, talking sports. And that's why you guys click with everyone, for that very reason. Like I'm not Mr. Sports Talk Radio, man. I don't take myself too serious at all. Like I said, the big difference between me and everyone else, I have a mic in front of me as far as that goes. By the way, where are we at with this? Someone said, so Nate said, Kenner, you unfortunately haven't had the chance to meet Mouse Cop in the chat. So that Barstool comment doesn't really make sense to you. Are you able to add context to that? Maybe not. I don't know.
Mouse Cop would not let that one slide. I'll admit. He calls us Chatterbox, or not Chatterbox. He calls us Barstool Light.
Oh, so is that a shot at you guys?
That's a shot at us.
Oh, so he doesn't like you guys?
No, he likes us. I don't know why. He hates us but loves us. He tunes into every show, comments every day.
So some of my most loyal listeners all started from people who just hated my guts. And then just going back and forth, arguing with them. And then all of a sudden, like, those are the guys that show up to every one of our live shows. Shout out to David Shaw, and those type of guys. But yeah, those guys, I mean, literal screaming matches on the phone to start. They told me everything they hated about me. And the next thing you know, they're the most loyal listeners we have. When we go do our live shows, they're the first ones out there. Nathan Hines said he's a troll as far as that goes. Who else? Shane Combs. It was a good show, Kenner. First-time listener. I'll have to try and tune in some more from here on out. Well, thank you, Mr. Combs. And I'm glad that I now have a listener that I did not have to get in a shouting match with to get to tune into the program. So I appreciate that, Shane. Now, thank you. But this was kind of cool coming in, doing it a little different. The show being repurposed now. It'll be aired live at 3 o'clock. Actually, when are we done? Because I got to make sure I get with my boss to make sure that he's catching these that you're sending so he can get them loaded in.
We can be done right now if you want.
We can be done right now?
If you want to roll it, finish it up, we can close it out.
All right. But hey, guys, thank you for hanging out in the chat.